We have come to the lunch break in the questioning of Stephen Tiddy at the undercover policing inquiry. He hasn't quite finished his appearance yet. He will be called back for further questions, if there are any, from any others. Stephen Tiddy was a detective sergeant in the SDS between 1997 and 2001. He was a handler, never undercover himself. He wrote up the reports and liaised with the undercover officers, particularly Mark Jenner, Jim Boyling, Carlos Araki, HN81, who we know as Dave Hagan. I'm joined by Evelyn Lubbers and Donald Driscoll of the Undercover Research Group. He's been a difficult witness because he is, well, I've described him as pretending to be incredibly stupid or possibly just incredibly stupid. What did you make of him?
Yeah, there were a few really specific things. I found it really funny when he asked to read something, buying more time, of course, not being used for other questions, but he would then sit there and put his finger on the screen and mouth the words, which I don't know. Well, what can you say? He would not remember a whole lot. Sometimes he would be like very quick, saying no, can't remember. Sometimes he needed to think a bit, said no, I can't recall, and sometimes he would just waffle along, just talk nonsense.
I think, yeah, there was a litany. It was just a sheer litany of can't remember, and it's like some of them and the other odd managers sort of kind of realize that they're trying to lie, and that they have to be careful about it. He's just like, this is a question in front of me, and he would deliberately not understand the questions.
Yes.
And so we put very clear to him, this is what's written here. The words are there in front of him, and he's unable to respond. He has to try and distract. I think the other thing that really jumped out at me was when he was offered an opportunity to apologize to the women. He just refused to take it.
Yeah.
He didn't say, I refuse. He just goes, word salad. But there was no actual apology coming forward. He didn't bear any responsibility on the covers, but his management was fine.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously trapped himself by the fact that he had admitted in his written statement that he was aware of the sexual relationship that Mark Jenner and Jim Boyling had. And then he did his very best to row back on that, claiming that he only knew it after they were deployed. Before he wrote that weird report on the female antenna, which I mean, essentially only really said that he knew that they were having relationships in the context that it made their undercover legend impeachable. When this was put to him, that obviously you're saying that because they were in relationships, that activists had a great level of trust for them. He's like, oh no, I wasn't saying that at all. But he said, well, how then are you communicating in this report to other members of the SDS, as you have claimed, that they were in a sexual relationship, if that's not what you're saying? And I mean, he couldn't answer that question. It sounded ridiculous. I mean, it was a farce.
Well, I think that was a really good example of the entirety of his evidence. It was like he's handed facts and he has to find an alternative interpretation. That's like any reasonable person reading those documents is going to say. And it's not just one document, it's a whole litany of documents, it's a whole litany of officers that he managed were all doing this. And he has one fixed thought in his head: I cannot admit to knowing relationships. I will find and this is why his answers become really inconsistent all the way through, because his sole objective is to avoid knowing about relationships. That's what he's been told to do, and that's what he is going to do.
Yeah, very much. I mean, it was quite interesting that, like, unlike many of the officers who were too candid, as it turned out, with Operation Hearn, he in fact lied to Operation Hearn and said that Jenner definitely never had a relationship whilst undercover. Something that he obviously did know. So he claimed that, oh no, he'd forgotten in 2014. He knew in 2000, forgotten in 2014, and remembered again now. I'm just like, come on, mate.
No consistency in the ability to lie.
None at all. None at all. He was asked quite extensive questions about the numerous file notes that exist about the attempts by both Alison and Rosa to contact the respective undercover officers that deceived them into sexual relationships. And we saw file notes being issued by HM58, who was the Detective Chief Inspector at the time, who was a close personal friend Steve Tiddy, and you very much get the impression he got the job because he was mates with the DCI. Giving the sort of the set responses to be given, what people were to do if there was any more of these calls. He claimed that though he would have obviously been shown it at the time, he doesn't remember it. Well, did he need to know? And it's like, well, who was answering the phones? Oh, that was me. It's like, well, then you obviously would have needed to know. Well, I don't remember it, and I would have remembered it. I mean, just ridiculous.
And such a big topic.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, remember that the office was moved after Rosa discovered where it was and who was, and found the phone numbers. Apparently, it must have been like a major shock. We've seen the past few days again, like how important it was, the operational security, where the office was. They panicked apparently, and he claims not to remember anything. That is so totally unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I mean, his whole sort of his body language and his physical reaction to when anything was like, he kept kind of, and then any time he was caught out in some way. Yeah.
Fish on the drive. Fish on land.
I mean, in theory, there will be further questions for him. I'm not sure what they'll be about. I mean, I don't think any legal team is expecting to get anything out of him.
No, but there was some other quite important questions regarding movement for justice and targeting on the Lawrences. And I know, was it Salisbury, the barrister?
Yes, Tim Salisbury.
Opened up quite nicely. Because what is your definition of racism? What do you see racism? And he presented as if he knew all about racism and stuff. And over time, he had no idea. And then when you get more into the what was going on around McPherson and HN81's targeting of Brixton, it's like, movement for justice. They're just interested in public disorder. Now, those who remember the previous set of hearings, it was very clear that they were all about justice for people who have been killed by the police. Wouldn't accept that, but he wouldn't see racism anyway. There was no racism going on. He couldn't see it. It's like you were the last person on this planet who would recognize racism if it was in your face. But you're quite happy to go out there and smear an organization like Movement for Justice in order to. And he kind of admitted, we were interested in the Lawrence family. We were interested in this, and we were showing reporting on it that he wrote. He took from HN81, wrote up reports where he mentioned gossip on the Lawrence family. But he can't recognize racism. There was no racism to be recognized. He didn't even recognize racism within the Metropolitan Police as a whole.
No. He said that there was never any racism or sexism in the Metropolitan Police. Unbelievably, what we talked about in the last video when I was with Belinda Harvey about the washing up and the ironing that women would do, he brought it up again a second time. I mean, I couldn't quite believe it. That thing on the gossip about the Lawrences as a couple and whether they were breaking up or not. He said, that was important to keep in because it gave an overview of public order concerns. I mean, just ridiculous. Quite frankly, a ridiculous statement. It was again yet another, and I'm afraid this is going to be a massive theme throughout this entire phase. A very irritating and frustrating witness to have, someone who was very clearly lying, very clearly doing their very best to row back and anything that they had inadvertently admitted to in Hearn or in their written statement, trying to row back on that as much as they could.
But you also in that you see the ideology of them. It's like the reason he was struggling to row back is because he had nothing to row back to.
Yeah.
So he's I'm not racist, but then when you go into his answers, he is racist, and the same way he's sexist. He is all the isms. He is your archetypal plod. We've all encountered them. They can't be trusted because they're bigots. And that's what he kind of came across as, trying to be a smooth, calm face, but betraying himself.
Yeah.
His evidence did give another peek in how the office worked.
Yeah.
Like we've seen a lot of undercover officers where it was like quite unclear whether they wrote their own reports or whether they handed in their notes. He clearly said that he took the notes of the undercovers that he was the cover officer for, and then wrote up the reports. And but basically he was you would expect he would be sanitizing them, as they call it, but it becomes very clear that he just wrote up everything because everything was important. Like it was put to him several times, like when there was a picket at a police station because a black person was killed by the police. Why do you need to note how many black people there were there? Well, that's all, of course, public order issue, and it's very important to know. And it's just very important to write down everything because you never know when things become important at a later stage. So that entire thing, that there's no sanitizing or hardly any, and just everything is written down by the cover officer, is kind of a peek into how that office works, basically.
Yeah, fair point. Is there anything else either of you'd like to add? I think we've covered him really. He will be back for further questions, but then after that, we'll be hearing from Helen Steele, who is returning to, in theory, complete her evidence, though I just can't see it myself. I think she'll be coming back again a third time. She started on Friday. Anything else to add?
No.
All right, thanks for joining us. I will see you again this afternoon. Please like, share, subscribe to these